Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Turnbull, co-director of the Psychosocial Safety and Leadership Institute, and I am so excited to be chatting with Mitch Wallis today. And we're going to talk about who Mitch is, what he offers, why this work matters, and how you can connect with him if you'd like to learn more. Mitch, I am so excited that you are part of the collective. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Nick. And what I want to start off by reflecting is so many people that I meet along my travels in this space and many spaces in life don't walk the walk. You meet your heroes sometimes and you're like, damn, I wish I didn't meet my heroes. Because they're not the person that you think that they are. And I can
Mm.
say that I'm really happy that someone like you is running something called a psychologically safe institute because you are an incredibly psychologically safe person. And, part of what we'll get into today is that you feel safety, you don't think or hear safety. And so it emanates as part of the energy that you put out into the world. And I know that might sound woo woo, but it's actually a huge business thing that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, and thank you so much. That's beautiful of you to say, and I'm really glad that you feel that too, because I always say if you're not feeling that, then I'm in the wrong business. Um,
Yeah.
I do really appreciate the feedback, and yeah, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. So I've been lucky enough to be working in this space now for almost 10 years. I was at Microsoft beforehand. I kind of look at my life in like a before and after breakdown. So before my breakdown, I was a global product manager at Microsoft. I was living the corporate dream, youngest ever intern in the company in Australia, at least. And then by 25, I was living in the States, responsible for a multi-billion dollar P&L, engineering, supply chain, marketing, the whole thing. What no one really saw, except my mum, on the other side of this outwardly overachieving persona, was an incredibly sick boy who was first diagnosed with acute OCD at 7 years old. And I spent my whole life masking and hiding a lot of pain. Not just that, but anxiety, depression, and eventually suicidal ideation, where in 2016, I almost took my own life, which kind of forced me to leave the corporate space and go on a mission to try and get well. As part of that, I got my master's degree in clinical psychology from Columbia University in New York.
Mhm.
And I went through kind of a dark night of the soul, and on the other side of that, realized what's important and actually how we overcome some of life's most difficult challenges. And what rose to the top for me, both personally and professionally, was just the medicinal power of connection,
Mm.
and how whether it's through real conversations that my whole IP is kind of based around, that I learned from the relationship I have with my mum,
Mhm.
um, or whether it's through the power of storytelling, which is my charity, Heart on My Sleeve, and the work that we do there. The human to human element of what nervous system regulation, fancy
Mm.
word for mental health, is just so paramount. And so that led me to starting a not for profit, and building up my personal brand. And in the last 8 years, I've been able to work with some of the biggest companies in the world. And, I've been the face of the learning and development program and wellbeing program at KPMG for more than half a decade, American Express. I've been flown around the world multiple times, worked on 4 continents with more than 10,000 people. And my specialty is quickly becoming not actually just mental health. I was the mental health guy for a long time, but I've now kind of landed on the connection guy.
Mm.
Um, and as a business skill, as much as it is anything else, connection as capability is my expertise, and real conversations is the vehicle to achieving that. And, working with leaders has been a space that I find myself in more and more, because I think more than any other user or avatar in the workplace, leaders, people managers set the tone of psych safety, of culture and engagement. And, all those metrics are kind of what the HR, CPO, CEO departments are trying to create, is in the backdrop of artificial intelligence. How do we create a culture that's future proofed and ready
Mm.
for maximizing the next evolution of work?
Yeah, and AI just won't take over that connection, right? And I'd love to throw the feedback back at you as well, because I actually can't see you working in corporate. I hear your background, but I see you and I've heard you speak, and you are met where you're meant to be. You are
Mm,
making incredible change, and people who have met you and you have spoken in their workplaces have come to me and said, "Oh my gosh, like he has done this, that, and whatever. He's changed the culture for the organization. He has, helped us dive into the tough stuff instead of running away from it." And that's where your zone of genius is. And while it sucks that it takes us an incredible heartache to get to where we are, I think sometimes that's needed, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be where you were today, and myself as well. So I just want to thank
mm.
you for that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm definitely in my dharma, in my calling, in my spiritual superpower, and part of it is selfish because I don't believe that suffering just exists, or at least I refuse to believe that pain means nothing, and so a lot of this is to pay it forward and to make meaning from what has been such a huge dark cloud in my life, turning that into sunshine.
Mm.
And service, being in service to others is such a beautiful way to bring your own mental health up. And as
Yeah.
much as you say, yeah, I couldn't imagine you working in corporate, 95% of my day now is working with corporate still, just out of
Yeah.
my kind of own space of passion. So I'm very
Yeah.
much still alive and well in this space.
Yes. But in a different angle, making different change. And you wear so many hats. So you've got author,
Mm.
speaker, educator, consultants. What do you actually do? How do you help organizations, and what do you offer when you're working with them?
Yeah. I think that there are many avenues into the work that I do, and part of what I've needed to get better at as a personal brand, as someone who wants to create change, is clearly articulating what that change can be. And I would say my area of expertise as it relates to at the moment, because I believe I want to go on and have many areas of change, but really tripling down on connection as capability. Arguably, the IP of real conversations and what I'm trying to do there should be the single greatest um, framework on the market for creating healthier relationships in your workplace. And for me, that's well beyond a tick the box exercise. It's well beyond WHS. It's well beyond just reducing risk or meeting legal compliance. This is a bottom line upside in so many ways, particularly as it relates to moving the metric of engagement. So, you know, I come in and I help people relate better so that we can drive higher engagement, which will ultimately lead to increased performance. And the way that that kind of sits is that we either come in and work with companies top down to create leadership teams that can actually lead people, not just act as subject matter experts with a bigger title, which a lot of people, managers and leaders, do, is they never realize that their KPI now, the definition of success is to protect and empower subject matter experts to do good work, not be a subject matter expert. In that 90% of their role is to nurture relationships and drive a team to outcome, an impossible thing to do if you don't know how to connect with them. And so, we've built a framework that is hyper practical, that a lot of the things on the market when I looked at it were mental health first aid or a sales training or something where it wasn't actually meeting the need of sitting in the mud with someone. And it was very like triage to professional services, like externalize. Whereas care should be a muscle that's within the DNA of the fabric of the organization. And if the only competency a leader needs to have really is that of being able to have effective conversations, especially the higher you get, the more you realize that you you're employing people to do the work. Your job is to guide them to do that effectively. So um and a leader has more influence to someone's mental health than a therapist, according to research. But most people didn't get there because they had good EQ and soft skills. And as AI starts to automate the doing, the EQ gaps will become hyper apparent, and leaders won't be able to get to where they want to be unless they are effective communicators. So that's the kind of first way is creating management teams of the future. The second way is we embed peer support networks that are actual peer support networks, not crisis CPR reactive services, which so many people think that you've just plonked someone in mental health first aid and you've got a network of advocates that actually make a difference. That's not true. So we bring baseline level of subpar literacy into a thriving network that has the education curriculum and ongoing support to be able to not only meet the needs of in workplace help seeking, which is the number one place that people go when they're not okay, is to a colleague, not HR, not management, not EAP, not even their own friends and family. They go to a colleague. So we maximize the potential of those things. And the third thing we do is we help customer facing teams have better interactions with their clients by learning how to communicate outside the role of an accidental counselor. So a lot of people who are on the front lines understand that, you know, they're exposed to trauma, whether they're hairdressers, Uber drivers, insurance case managers, and all the collection of umbrellas that we find ourselves hearing the intimate details of someone's life. And we don't want to be under-involved when a customer's told us their dad's just died and missed an opportunity to be helpful or bond. But we don't want to be over-involved where we take that home with us, we probe too far. And so communication as it relates to deepening relationships from a business profitability standpoint is also where we specialize. And ultimately, I believe that if you turn the hub of connection up, then all the metrics start to psych safety, engagement and everything else, which leads to positive outcomes. And we've got case studies now with KPMG and with the likes of these people that shows that our work truly works.
Yeah. And it's so necessary. Like as you were talking, I'm going, oh gosh, this business needs that help there. And we could be partnering together on this thing here. And yeah, the connection is really the key. And that's not all you do, though. You're also, and you alluded to it before, the founder of Heart on My Sleeve. And can you share a little bit more about the charity?
Yeah, so the charity's job is to ideally eradicate silence by 2030. That's our moonshot goal, where we're trying to prevent anyone who's struggling with a mental health issue keeping it to themselves. We are the experts at helping people get it off your chest and onto your sleeve. And the primary way we do that is through campaigns and education literacy, all the way from big mass media things through to the e-learning workshops on our website. And the Heart on My Sleeve promise that we get people to take. We work with ambassadors to pull these communications and messages through the line. We share inspirational stories on our podcast weekly of overcoming and resilience, and get people to role model what it means to get it off their chest and onto their sleeve, so they can not only learn about it, but see it done in practice. And we're also passionate about workplaces that are trying to create a speak up culture, not where, I think when a lot of organizations hear that term, particularly if they're on the earlier journey toward psychosocial risk mitigation and optimization, that they're like, oh, so we just create a culture of victims. That's absolutely not what we're trying to do. We're not asking workplaces to assume more liability than they need to, but they need to create a environment where people don't feel like their mental health is under threat, that they don't cause or aggravate psychological injury. That's the law. That's not a choice, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that is if someone's not doing okay, they feel like there are avenues inside the company, not just the EAP, where they can express that, and the company helps to the extent that's reasonably practicable, mitigate how they might be not helping that, and then ideally empower them to take steps forward in their well-being to make themselves better. So Heart on My Sleeve is really helping that happen in the most direct, safe, and controlled manner possible, so that it doesn't become over or underbaked.
Yeah. And people need that support, right? Because if they don't know what to do, then they do nothing, or they put their foot in their mouth and sometimes make the situation worse, which is why we don't do anything. So,
Yeah. We don't want feet in mouth. We want
no.
hearts on sleeves.
Yes, love it.
Yeah.
So what makes what you do unique to what else is out there?
I'm doing a lot of work in America at the moment, and they're saying, how do I put you in my mind? And I say, if Brene Brown and Jay Shetty had a baby that looked like Justin Bieber but spoke in an Australian accent about psychology, that's me. Um, and I think that there's a reason that LendLease and Microsoft and Allen's law firm and all these companies are trusting us
Yeah.
beyond all these kind of incumbent L&D training providers. And it's because it genuinely works. It hits both the framework science aspect
Mm.
and the personal storytelling vulnerable aspect to bring out true behavior change. It's not something that stays on the floor of the workshop, for example. It's
Mm.
stuff that, 3 years later, people will turn to a colleague and say, hey, real conversation. And they already know what that means. And it triggers certain conditions immediately so that there's a shared language framework that can be built into the way that we operate and communicate as a behavioral norm, day in and day out.
Mm.
And I think that the good thing about what we offer is it goes from it hits such a vast variety of metrics in that, yes, it will improve psychosocial risk and operate as a mental health framework, but it goes all the way up to a business language center that helps leaders lead, staff do their jobs, subject matter experts be subject matter experts, because ultimately it's a relationships core focus that gives you the how when so often that part is omitted.
Yeah. And look, I think you've already answered this question, but is there anything else you wanted to add about why this work is important to you?
I've almost lost my life from it,
Mm.
but also, in some ways, I wish um, I had this type of support when I was in the workforce because, some of the things that I exited the workforce for was because I didn't believe that I could be me and be in a job at the same time. Whereas some of the things that were most destructive toward my mental health was actually my superpowers. That
Mm.
was the reason why I was an overperformer. So if someone knew how to manage me correctly, they would have not only retained me, but benefited from my X-Men like tendencies that just left untreated were, not good and unhealthy, but the right people can really trim the rose bush of its thorns and allow someone like me to bloom. And I just don't want to be in conversations that I had with, some managers were amazing. It's kind of like rich dad, poor dad. I remember having some conversations with a manager where I felt so close to them and all I wanted to do was get well so that I could bring my best back.
Yeah.
And then other managers where I was like, you wouldn't care if I left tomorrow. In fact, I only feel like a burden when I'm speaking with you about this. And so I don't want people to go through that. And I don't want companies to lose potential when it's unnecessary to do so. And also, people come into our workshops from a B2B perspective as employees, whether it's leaders, staff, or otherwise, but they listen as parents, as partners, as friends, and they realize that every day I'm trying to be helpful to people I care about, but I'm making them feel worse because
Yeah.
I'm jumping straight to problem solving, or I'm making it about myself, or I'm being a blind optimist, or I'm being a helicopter and losing my sense of self-regulation, or I'm being an ostrich and burying my head in the sand. Again, more language frameworks that become adopted the moment you go through this program.
Yeah.
And they ultimately want to be better human beings and derive a sense of meaning from their process of achieving their goals more than just achieving their goals. And I think that that's kind of the cherry on top in this program.
Mm. I love that. And when it comes to the organizations and leaders that you work with, who do you most enjoy working with, or who should get in touch with you?
Well, we specialize in companies that are looking to go from baseline to thriving. So, um, we're probably not for you if you're a really small organization that's just looking to, you know, get some things in place to meet bare minimum standards. We're showing how you can have kind of a best in class culture.
Mm,
Where we've got a lot of run rates is professional services, legal consulting, otherwise tech, med tech,
yeah.
and FMCG real estate. They're kind of probably our 5 or 6 verticals where we thrive,
Mm,
but it is agnostic to industry. We also want to work with organizations that are probably head based at the moment with an aspiration to be more heart orientated, and we can bring the heart out of your DNA without it becoming a liability where you've
mm,
over empathized or you've over humanized your culture and people take advantage of that.
mm,
um Ultimately, where for you, if you see the multiplier opportunity of psychologically safe communication being embedded now so that it's too late by the time AI dehumanize your workforce.
yeah. That's awesome. And what's the best way for the community or for anyone else listening to this to get in touch with you?
Yeah, reach out to my team, operations at mitchwallis.com. We house all of our programs underneath that kind of banner of a name, which is a lot of pressure, but an amazing opportunity that I feel so grateful now to be in this position.
Mhm.
We have discovery and exploration fit calls just to make sure that we can help. And if we can't help, we'll add value with regard to saying, here's how I reckon you can get the most upside. But if you are looking to create, the top 1% of leaders that have the skills to be able to lead teams with confidence, we're your people. If you're looking to upskill your mental health first aid network into a thriving, real conversations, activated group of humans, we're for you. If you're looking at changing customer facing intact teams to become more safe,
Mm,
we're for you. And if you're looking for a keynote speaker outside of all those things that can give you a Venn diagram intersection of true business experience, clinical knowledge, mental health, been there, done that,
mm.
and a track record of being able to give results, then I'm your guy for that as well.
Yes, and we have an incredible 2026 lined up, and you are a huge part of that. Speaking of
Yeah.
keynote speaking, you will be speaking at the Psychosocial Safety Summit in September next year in
Yes.
20 Heads. So, very excited and very grateful for that. You'll also be doing a boot camp and a workshop for the community as well. So, I'm so excited for 2026 to begin, and we're
Likewise,
going to
Nick.
actually dive into more on a podcast episode as well because we could talk for hours.
We
But
could.
I just want to close off by saying again, my huge appreciation for you being part of the collective and the value that you add to the world, but also to our community. So thank you for coming on board. Thank you for sharing your expertise and can't wait to do more with you next year.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you. And I'm really looking forward to it as well.
Thanks.